For the past 5 years, I have kept a journal that is specifically for my reading. I write down every single book that I read. It goes in here. I've talked about commonplace books on this channel. That's where I have thoughts about what I'm reading. This is a little bit different than a commonplace book for me. This is literally just a list of books. I don't write any thoughts about them. I just list out the book and the author. It's a really nice little practice to keep up because it forms a kind of intellectual autobiography. You can see what was drawing your interest in 2018, for instance. That's when I started this practice. And you can see how maybe some of those interests persisted in 2019 or 2020, in the years later. And then it also allows you to kind of do some really rough metrics on it without having to use something like a spreadsheet. For instance, I just count all of the books that I've read. I can see that in 2018, I read 45 books. That's not a surprising number for me. It's a little bit less than maybe I'd like to read, but I was in graduate school at the time. I was reading a lot of articles, and I wasn't going to put articles in this list. This is for books where I've read them from cover to cover. In 2019, I was finishing up my dissertation, so I was earning my PhD about halfway through the year. It was also the year I got married, so I was a little busier, but I was able to read just a bit more, and it looks like I read 60 books. And then in 2020, turns out we were all inside a lot, and I was able to read a lot more, and I read 72 books. And then in 2021, that was one of my best years for reading, and it looks like I read 76 books last year. And now this year, though, for 2022, and you probably can't understand anything that's written there because it's all scribbled, but I've read 40 books, and it looks like by the end of the year, I'll have read 52. I found that 52 is a really natural pace for me. That's a book a week, and I am able to not really push myself. And I'm also able to read deeper and, in a way, just feel better about my reading when I'm reading about 52 books a year. Obviously, that's a very individual thing, and personalities will differ. So there will be some people who hear that and think, I can read more. Other people are going to say 52 sounds like an outrageous number for them. That's fine. What I'm pointing out is that I've sort of naturally found a reading pace. And now that I've found that reading pace, I'm able to just feel good. I feel content. And now I'm able to focus on what I'm going to say is about reading better rather than reading more. And reading better versus reading more is the crucial distinction that I want to make in this little video. There is a lot of book content on YouTube, and I have sort of accidentally found myself entering into this world, talking about notes and books. And I have this podcast, the same name, The Classical Mind, where we talk about books from the Western canon. Those aren't books that you can read quickly, at least not usually. In a forthcoming episode, we're going to be talking about Plato's Apology. And that's not a very long dialogue from Plato, and still, it probably took me about 3 to 4 hours to give it a really good read. If I needed to read it faster, or if I really wanted to read all of Plato, I could probably have read it in an hour and a half, maybe even an hour if I really focused. But I don't think it would have been the best kind of reading. And in fact, I would have said that probably I read it poorly. And when you're thinking to yourself, why do I want to read more? You really should be asking, if I read more, if I try to read more books, will I actually be doing a worse job as a reader? Now, this can be kind of generalized. So there's all this content on YouTube, on like BookTube or whatever. And oftentimes it talks about how to read more or how to remember every single thing you've read and how to be super efficient. It really quickly gets into this kind of toxic productivity culture, which is something I think we really want to resist. Now, I am not against reading more. In fact, I really like to read, but I think that before you prioritize reading more, you should really prioritize becoming a better reader. And becoming a better reader is, I think, more important than becoming a more efficient reader or someone who spends more time reading. We can kind of consider an analogy with going to the gym. So, someone who goes to the gym a lot, like they spend all of their time working out, that's not that isn't always actually the most conducive to their health. Um, you can overexert yourself, or you'll just find that you're spending a lot of time at the gym, but you're not actually finding that you're doing quality exercise. People who are mindful about the amount of time that they spend at the gym or doing some kind of physical activity, they dedicate themselves to it, might spend less time at the gym, might spend less time exercising, but they're actually getting more out of it because they have health goals in mind, or they have things that they're trying to accomplish. And so by being more intentional and more focused, they are actually exercising better. And I want to say that for a lot of the books that are really worth reading, especially the kind of books that we would talk about on this channel, like we have a forthcoming video out about Plato's Apology, so a Platonic dialogue, these aren't things that you should try to read quickly, and they're not things that you should try to binge. These are books that you should really savor, that you should spend a lot of time with, and thus you want to read them actually rather slowly. In graduate school, I had a seminar on the Nicomachean Ethics, which is one of the best works of Aristotle, in my opinion. And we spent the entire semester reading the Nicomachean Ethics. I think the translation we read is about 300 pages. Now, we read other articles and we read other scholars' commentaries on the Nicomachean Ethics, but our primary text was reading the Nicomachean Ethics. I spent a semester of my life reading that book. I still don't think I fully understand it. I've now read it probably 5 times. That is not an efficient way to read. That is not a kind of reading that is conducive to amassing a really big book list. It's not the kind of reading that makes you fill up your shelves with your book haul, but it's a kind of reading that I think will make you a deeper thinker, will make you a better human being actually in the long run because you are properly training the intellect. And it's the kind of reading that allows you to more deeply engage with the Western canon, which is really kind of the focus of this channel, talking about the great books that have been produced out of the Western tradition. There's so much of this toxic productivity culture out there. It's a kind of culture that says that we need to do more and we always need to be doing better and we need to produce more. And we can do this by establishing metrics and measurements. And once we've adequately measured things, then we'll be able to look back and say, finally, I feel good about what I've done. I hate this culture. I hate this way of looking at things. And I hate the fact that even myself, I have sometimes fallen into this when I think about reading. So I've taken something that I absolutely love. I've taken something that I really actually adore, that it's a huge part of my life. And I've turned it into this pursuit of metrics and success. And that is the completely wrong attitude. That is absolutely no way. That is bad. Don't do it. I'm sure that right now, if you went to the YouTube search bar and you typed in how to read more books, you would find thousands of videos. Some of them would have millions of views, and everyone would be ready to give you quick tips. And they would say, follow these 3 tips and you'll be able to read 100 books in a year. But honestly, ask yourself, if you read 100 books in a year, would you be able to retain the information that was there? Would you be able to deeply engage with the thought behind the book, right? With the thought of the author, if it's a fiction work, or of the poet, or of the philosopher, of the historian? Would you be able to really engage with them if you read them that quickly? And 3, would you be able to choose the kinds of books that really are worth reading? So right here is the Divine Comedy. It's Dante. It's 3 volumes, so it's 3 books. I think if you add this all together, we're looking at close to 2,000 pages. Now, they are verse, so it's a little bit easier to read, each page. And there's lots of notes in these editions, so maybe you don't have to read all of it. Let's cut it down and say there's 1,000 pages instead of 2,000. That's still a lot. And I would say that to read the Divine Comedy is in some sense better than to read easier works. They are better in the same way that eating certain kinds of foods are better for your body and doing certain kinds of activities are better for your physical health. These books are soul food. They are the kinds of books that can make you a better person. We don't get their benefits, however, if we try to binge them. We don't get their benefits if we don't slow down and savor them. And so, all I want to say in this video, with all of the other content that might come out, my co-host and I do monthly discussions of difficult books from the Western canon, some big and some small. We chose that monthly pace actually on purpose. We chose it because to read one of those books in a month, that's doable because you can read it properly in a month. But to read it one a week, that's hard. And you really don't ever want to get to that point where you are just binging on these things to be able to say that you have read them. You want to be able to absorb them. You want to be able to spend time with them. You want to actually turn these books into old friends that you revisit, that you miss when you haven't read in a while. Those kinds of friendships, just as with human beings, take time and energy and effort to build and to nurture and sustain. So if you want to treat your books as friends and you want to get the most out of them that you can, you really just got to give up on reading more. Choose your books wisely, find a good list, or better yet, find one work that really speaks to you and then start going from there, follow a natural progression. Revisit those works from time to time, see how you have changed, see what you missed in your previous readings. Find good people to talk to, find good people either online or better yet in person to talk to about those books. Form book clubs, form discussion groups, form little local communities where you can find like-minded individuals who want to read these great books. And while I do think it's nice to keep a little journal, keep a journal like I do, so that way you can look at it and say, yes, I've read this many books this year. Don't turn the number into the goal. Really think about yourself and the kind of person you want to be. Make that the goal.